Facebook, the most popular social media network. A place to meet friends, a place to meet family, a place to meet some really deranged people. Be sure to wrap yourselves in a blanket cocoon as we look at some rather disturbing encounters on Facebook that will be sure to make you more cautious as you chat online. I blame Facebook. I don't partake in social networking. I don't do it, and I don't particularly like it. I'm well aware that predators use the format to lure their prey. I know full well that it's probably a waste of time, that one typically loses a great amount of authentic connection with their peers and even their family. I realize that this sort of thing does nothing but inflate an already swollen ego. I acknowledge all of these things without hesitation, but the truth is, I couldn't stop logging in to observe my ex-girlfriend's page. I truly, honestly couldn't. Maybe it's that my life had turned a little sour the past few years, and hers had done nothing but improve. I'm not typically a jealous person by nature, but when your ex-girlfriend turns into a supermodel, it's hard not to purse your lips. Okay, maybe supermodel is going too far, but she was looking pretty amazing. Her skin had cleared up, she was in better shape, and really seemed to take pride in her appearance these days. I looked at these pictures and just wondered what it was about me or our relationship that kept her from being the best she could be. I know that in some ways I had hurt the girl. I teased her about her appearance all the time. It mostly concerned the frumpy way she put herself together or how she didn't wash her hair as often as she could have. But nothing too nasty. I really was fond of her, and I thought our 2 years together were pretty special. However, we started to drift apart emotionally. I wanted some excitement, she wanted a big family. After a big argument one night in my kitchen, the relationship was over. She found a place somewhere across town, and we haven't spoken since. Lately, things have been far from swell for me. My current girlfriend, Jean, left me. My dog had been hit by a car, and I'd been sick and sweating in bed with tuberculosis. After endless rounds of antibiotics, I was getting to a point where I could stand again, but the past few months had been some of the worst of my life. The coughing had left my chest so sore I could barely turn over. That's when I took an even deeper dive into watching my ex online. I didn't have much else to do. While she was mostly unemployed during our time together, she was since enrolled in nursing school and earned a degree. Her current boyfriend is definitely handsome and, from what I gather in his pictures, rather loaded. He was always standing before the lip of the ocean, the top of a mountain, or the elegant veranda they must have shared every evening now. Their lives looked admittedly pretty sweet. And as the past few weeks went on, I checked her page every day. Reading her posts, I saw that when she wasn't fine dining or skiing, she was saving lives at a hospital. She hiked with her man every morning and cuddled their 2 puppies together at night. She doesn't own a television anymore. It's a waste of beautiful life, according to them. I couldn't believe the person she'd become. She'd become much like the woman I wanted her to be. 3 years late. I became a little bit obsessed. I thought about her way more often than I'd cared to admit. I wondered if she ever thought about me, if she ever discussed me with her new rich man. I figured they both would find my situation rather pathetic or funny or both. So I never messaged her, never had the guts. I just really wanted to know if I'd been forgotten or not, if she thought about me at all. And if she did, was it in a positive way? All these things were running through my head repeatedly the day I copied her home address and put it in my navigation system. Now, I was in no way planning to speak to her. I just wanted to get a glimpse of where she lived. And I'll also admit that I had a faint hope that she would be outdoors, so I could catch a glimpse of her in person as I drove by. I'm not a stalker type, believe me, but this was just consuming me in a way I hadn't felt before. I needed something more than a goddamn Facebook page. I pulled past the home I was directed to and found myself stopping a couple houses ahead. I pulled over and watched the house in my rearview mirror for about 45 minutes. I know it's a long time, but she did come out. I turned around in my seat and caught a glimpse as she stepped into her sedan. I wished I'd been closer, but she was definitely looking pretty good. It made me heat up a little inside, one part nerves, the other attraction. Without realizing it, my hand had pulled open the car door and my feet were carrying me down the sidewalk. I believe my plan was to fairly briefly scope the place out and then head back home. What I did in reality was quite different. After seeing that the house was very still and most likely empty at this hour of the afternoon, I headed to the backyard just for a peek. It was plain boring, not much to see there. So I turned to the back of the home and saw that it was only covered with a screen door. The main one was left open. I walked a little closer and squinted. The house looked empty from where I was. I saw no furniture, wall hangings, or anything of the sort. This discovery brought me closer to the door, guided my grip to the handle. I so very carefully pulled it open and stepped inside. The house was definitely empty. It was dusty and stale. There were no dogs or lovely verandas around here. I was beyond confused. I made my way very quietly to the main living area and found a mattress on the center of the floor, covered in rustled sheets and blankets. On the pillow was a laptop, cord reaching from the wall. I began to shake, to tremble for reasons I just hadn't expected. I approached the computer and pried it open, illuminating the screen. It was my Facebook page. As this fact registered, I started to feel queasy, like my illness was back in full force. I read over my last wall posts. They were all old. I hadn't made a post in months. The first one was referring to my last girlfriend, Jean. The next was a picture of my busted knee from last year. I'd fallen playing hockey with friends and then posted that from the hospital. That's when everything started to make itself clear. I scanned through all of her own Facebook photos. There were no pictures of her with anyone else, just pictures of other people she stuck throughout her collection. Everyone who posts on her page is from her hometown 300 miles away. I began to wonder if she'd ever been to nursing school when I saw a white uniform hanging from a ceiling fan in the other room. Questioning everything, I paused in the still house and thought long and hard. I remembered a conversation she and I had about medical science. She was so interested in how diseases progressed, which are the most silent killers, which are the most painful, and how they can be transmitted to humans. I felt adrenaline start to course through my veins and sweat gather above my lip. I remembered the experiments with frogs and turtles she practiced as a kid. My mouth was watering and my stomach churning as I ran toward her refrigerator. I swung open to the clatter of glass vials ticking against each other. I started choking back vomit as I read the labels and the dates. Hepatitis C, July 19th, 2013. Hepatitis B, January 30th, 2013. Tuberculosis, February 22nd, 2013. Taped to the inside of the fridge was a list of all of my doctor's appointments for surgery, follow-ups, and physical therapy. I finally vomited all over her kitchen floor, taking in deep gulps of breath with tears filling my eyes. I wondered if she was the one who ran over my dog, too. Don't accept random Facebook requests. I moved to South Korea for university when I turned 18. I'm now 21, and this happened over 2 years ago. Whilst there has definitely been unwanted attention from some guys in the past, most of them get the message that I'm not interested. This, however, was a little more unsettling. The university I go to has an institute for language, which is where all my classes were at the time, and it's pretty common knowledge that most foreigners in this part of Korea would know or study at this institute. It's not abnormal for me to receive random Facebook friend requests from guys wanting to learn English or make foreign friends, and most of the time I just ignore them, unless we have a few mutual friends or I've met them before. I got a friend request from this guy named Nico, and we had quite a handful of mutual friends, and he'd messaged me too, saying he was sorry for the randomness of the request, but he was just trying to make as many foreign friends as he could. I thought what the heck, and I accepted and messaged him back saying it was no bother. From what I could tell by his Facebook photos, he was heavily pierced and tattooed and stated he was Japanese, but had studied in Canada and could speak good English, and also a foreigner studying at my university. After a few days, he'd message me again and I replied, and it was a casual conversation and would often bring up maybe meeting for a coffee or a movie, which I declined, until he started getting more aggressive for no reason. Every time I'd make a comment, he'd find some way to turn it into an argument, which grew tiring super fast, so I just ignored him. He'd often ask if I had a boyfriend, to which I'd reply no, and he'd bluntly say that we should be together. It was at this point where I decided I didn't really want anything to do with him, so I politely declined on the basis I didn't know him, we never met, and we hadn't even known each other a week. He didn't take my refusal well and began throwing insults at me, based on my looks, and saying overly graphic things that he'd do to me if he ever saw me. Apparently I was being stupid not to take him up on the offer, because I never do better than him, and he'd make me see that. It creeped me out beyond belief, so I just blocked and deleted him off Facebook, and tried to forget about it. I mentioned it to a friend of mine, and she immediately knew exactly who I was talking about. Apparently, I was not the first girl he added on Facebook and tried to bully into meeting him and being his girlfriend. After asking a few more of my friends who we'd had as mutual friends on Facebook, and they all described pretty much similar situations involving Nico. One girl even told me that she'd give him the benefit of the doubt and met with him, and it turned out that he didn't even go to our university, but actually lived over an hour away and would travel there daily, probably to watch and obsess over which girl he would find on Facebook next. He told her he was born in America and never been to Japan, yet he told me that he was Japanese and studied in Canada. So who knows how much of what he said to anyone was actually true. I felt a bit freaked out by this since, but tried not to let it bother me. I never see him around and I'd block him so I forgot about it. That was until about a week or two later, I received a message from him on Facebook, on another account, saying how he'd seen me that day at school. Which shook me up a bit, since I hadn't even considered that he might actually be watching me at school. I ignored the message and blocked the account. A few days later, I got numerous messages from different accounts, claiming to be Nico's friends, saying how he had his account hacked, and if I could please unblock him so he could explain and we could talk it over. I ignored these messages too, but I kept receiving more, all of which I am pretty sure were just Nico himself, trying to reach out to me to get my attention. The more I ignored them, the more violent and aggressive the messages became. And I could tell that most of the time, when he said he'd seen me, he was lying. He'd say things like, "I saw you today at the library all day, you fucking slut. You're a fucking four-eyed slut who can't get laid." And other messages to that extent. I knew he was clutching at straws because I never used the school's library to study, and although I wear glasses, I never wear them in public. So I just kept blocking the accounts and try not to let it bother me. I figured he'd get bored of me soon enough and let it go. Until one day after classes had finished, and I was browsing the small convenience store in the building to grab a drink on my way home. I opened up the fridge to get a bottle of water, and when I closed the door, he was literally standing right beside me. He didn't say anything. He was just staring at me. I hadn't seen him in person before because I never agreed to meet him, but I knew straight away it was him, and I freaked out. I dropped the bottle and I just left the store. I didn't walk home because I was afraid he'd follow me and find out where I lived. So I just went back into school and stayed around areas where there were lots of people until a friend of mine came to meet me. After that, I saw him a handful of times when I'd leave class. He'd just be standing there doing nothing in particular, watching people as they walked past, and he'd stare at me intently. I made sure to always be with friends when I went to and from class. It didn't go anywhere alone for a while, but after a week or so, the messages stopped and I didn't see him again. The last time I heard from him was about a year ago, when he messaged me on yet a new Facebook account, asking if we could be friends again because he'd changed and it was all a joke. Needless to say, I ignored the messages, blocked the account, and will not be taking up on his offer on being friends. So, Nico, you creepy-ass stalker, let's not meet. Ever again. The creepy guy on Facebook. Alright, a little background. This guy added me on Facebook out of the blue when I was like 13. I'm 16 now. When I asked him who he was, he told me he saw my profile picture and thought I was beautiful and all that. Fast forward a year after we've been talking, and he tries hooking me up with one of his friends because you're so beautiful and he just has to have you. I declined several times because I had a boyfriend. When I posted a picture of us later, him and his friends started saying so many awful things to me in the comments section. After blocking all of them is when things got really creepy. They sent Google Maps photos of my house. I had never given them my address and kept the location thing off at all times. And the guy I originally met threatened to cut my heart out. I blocked him and reported him. The next year, he admits his undying love for me. He refused to leave me alone. I finally just got rid of my Facebook and plan on making a new one. So, creepy guy from India, let's not meet again.